see okay? Okay, good. Thanks, Tony. All right. So contesting above 30 megahertz. It's a whole different world up there. We've got a huge amount of spectrum to play with, and certainly a different way of contesting. Just to give a brief history about all this, you know, the VHF really came into its own in the 1930s with the access to the 5-meter band. Now, remember back in those days, even getting on 21 megahertz was a challenge. So 10 and 5 meters were really considered way up there. But there were a few diehard experimenters out on the East Coast and in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and around the country. They found that they could actually get signals out on 5 meters. So the contests back in those days were more radio relay tests rather than a traditional contest like we have today. But it did stimulate activity and get people's interest up, and that was sort of the key thing. And over time, the activity expanded to the 2.25 meter band and the 1.5 meter band, and also up on 400 megahertz as well, because back in those days, we had 400 to 401 megahertz allocation, which was way up. In 1941, VHF only class was added to field day, and that really stirred up activity on 6 meters as well. I mean, 5 meters. And then, of course, World War II came along, and we were pulled off the band and bands. And in the States, a few years later, once the U.S. entered the war, the hams were shut down as well. So after the war in 1946, we wound up with the 6 meter band, having given up 5 meters for TV channel 2. And 2 meters, and then 220, 420, and 1225 were added as well within the 1946, 1947 timeframe. So the activity was really concentrated in the high population areas, obviously for local communications and distance testing. So here in Canada, the activity seemed to evolve around cities in Montreal and the Golden Horseshoe here and Vancouver. And a lot of the activity was primarily on AM. So anyway, post-war, contesting started up again. The ARL actually started what they called VHF marathons. And these were long-term contests. The first one lasted for 8 months. So it was like a cumulative contest. And there was also a states VHF contest, which I found reference to. And they had some interesting scoring there. Points were given out for mileage, band multipliers, and sections. And I'm looking at this and going, well, yeah, geez, I thought that was all new stuff. But there you go. The guys were way ahead of their time with doing that, and they realized that the way to stimulate activity was to do some kind of point stacking. So hold that thought. In 1947, there was a VHF relay and WSO party QSO party held in May. And 1950 included the ARL June VHF QSO party, the September and January contests as well. By that time, they had been established. At that time, the exchange was signal report and section. So Ontario, being 1,000 miles by roughly 1,000 miles, was one section. So it was, it played well with the small states, the small eastern states, and some of the, like New Jersey was divided into northern New Jersey and southern New Jersey. So that was really great. But Ontario was Ontario, and so we were kind of handicapped in that regard. Over time, activity grew, and some multi-op categories were developed, and some of the famous multi-op operations were started up with operations like WA1MUG from Mount Greylock, and that sort of morphed into W2SZ Portable One. So they seem to be the monster VHF multi group that dominated the contest landscape in the 60s. So in 1970s, a bunch of us decided we were going to do something about that and form the Toronto VHF Society, with the intent of challenging the US guys. And then along in the 80s, along came grid squares, which changed the whole landscape again for scoring.
Dana, you've muted yourself.
Dana, you are muted yourself. Unmute yourself.
There. Okay, sorry. I must have had the pointer up. Does everybody copy okay? So ARL have a number of different categories in the current contest format now. They have a high power, single op, high power, single op, low power, single op portable. And then they also have different classes of rover operation, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. As you can see, rover, limited and unlimited rover, single op 3 bands, a single op FM category has been added. And then you've got multi-op and limited multi-op. So there are a number of different ways you can get into contesting on VHF, depending on your circumstances and opportunities. So keep that in mind. And as I said, I mean, there are a lot of VHF contests. We've got the ARL January VHF contest, which we recently activated in January. Spring sprints coming up. The big one is the ARL June VHF contest every year, and the CQ Worldwide VHF, which is a 2-band contest, 6 and 2 meters, and it's very well attended. The SMRC contest, the 6 Meter International Radio Club, runs a contest as well, and the ARL 222 and up distance contest. With a shout out to the old distance ruling back in the 40s, which is a great contest for operating on the high bands. The September VHF contest, the fall sprints, ARL microwave contest, which is actually 2 weekends, and ARL's EME contest, again, which is 2 weekends. And a new one that the Rochester VHF group threw in this year was a mini sprint just after New Year's, which ran for 1 hour on a Saturday morning from 11 to 12 o'clock noon, on 3 bands. And that was kind of interesting because you're forced to try and jam in as many contacts as possible in an hour. So you really have to concentrate. Then there's the Ontario Kusu Party and the RAC Winter Contest as well. So there are a lot of opportunities throughout the year here to participate. And again, you know, I alluded to the fact that we have a lot of bands. Well, we have a huge amount of spectrum up above 30 megahertz. Here's a brief list of what they are, and just a summary of what the point counts are for typical ARL contest. So you can see that the higher bands are stacked again to provide more opportunities to make contacts and an incentive to gain more points compared to the easier bands to work on 6 meters and 2 meters. Now, the other interesting thing is here, 222 to 225 has always been kind of an orphan band around with the amateur community, and I really don't get it because it's a tremendous tremendous band. It has propagation similar to 2 meters. It doesn't have the intermod problems that 2 meters has had in the past. But one of the issues is the big three Japanese manufacturers seem to be hell bent on avoiding providing equipment for that band. And I know the excuse is, well, you know, in Japan that band is used for, you know, this and that, and you know, it's not a major allocation in Region 3, so they're basically not going to produce stuff, which
It's 1 o'clock.
which I find is pretty bizarre, given the opportunities here and the requests for them to do something. I mean, they have done stuff in the past, but lately a lot of the radios coming out just don't have that capability, which is unfortunate. You know, recently 3300 to 3500 has come under pressure in the US, and there's basically the FCC's come out and said, well, in the next 2 years, we're going to deallocate the band. No such commentary on the Canadian side, so we'll see where things go with that. And of course, there's all the microwave bands as well, and you know, that's a whole different topic to discuss as well. But there's just tremendous potential up there as well that's being explored by a number of different people, some of who are on here today. Shout out to Steve, V3 SMA. It all has some very interesting mixes in terms of propagation and what you can do and how far you can work and activity levels. So it varies. It's tremendously different going from 50 megahertz to 10 gigahertz in terms of operating. And propagation modes. Well, there's a lot of different propagation modes to make contacts with, extend your range on VHF and up. Meteor scatter, Aurora, something that we haven't had very much of lately. But when I got on the band back in the 60s, you know, it was like in the fall, we get Auroras seemed like every couple of weeks. The band 2 meters would be open on Aurora. And lately the sun has been so quiet, we really haven't had any big flares or any kind of geomagnetic disturbances to stir things up. And you know, at least down here, you know, so, and then there's F2 as well. We haven't seen much of that either on 6 meters recently. With all the prognostication that's going on, you know, one remains hopeful that perhaps in the next 2 years, we'll see it come back if the solar cycle 25 goes where some of the guys have been predicting where it's going to go. So we shall see about that. And then there's sporadic E. Sporadic E is interesting because it occurs regularly in the summertime and again back in December as well. So we certainly can work some very long distances there as well. Amazingly long distances. So it's been carrying the main bulk of 6 meter operations and 2 meters as well for long distance stuff lately. And there's troposcatter, tropospheric bending, ducting, all weather related. So, you know, like the VHF guys pray for hurricanes and weather related to that. So frontal systems, stalled frontal systems, and that can trigger DX. And then on the higher bands, rain and snow scatter can come into play as well. And even on VHF, airplane scatter can be a big factor in propagation as well, especially with the larger aircraft. But one thing we noticed with the lockdown and the reduction in air traffic, that airplane scatter component has dropped substantially. But it's still there, and hopefully it will ramp up. And this is a picture here on the right of Barry V4MA with his 78 gigahertz station. So you can see it's a lot of plumbing in there and stuff, but the technology challenges on some of these bands are pretty substantial. So contesting toolbox, what do we need here to really have some fun? Location, location, location. That's the key thing. If you really want to work and play in this game, you really have to pick your spot. And of course, with VHF, height matters, and location in terms of accessibility to the East Coast. This is a map on the right here of population density. And if you look, you can see the high density along the Atlantic coast there, and that's where all the VHF activity is concentrated, is in that corridor down into the Virginia, and I seem to have lost my mouse here, but into Virginia, like due south of Toronto, in that area, Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts. Just a tremendous amount of activity down there, and you've got to be able to tap into that on the mid to higher VHF bands. 6 meters, not so much, because it depends on skywave propagation, like sporadic E. So you're looking at picking up populations down in the area of the Gulf Coast, Texas, and the Midwest. And of course, around the GTA too, Montreal, all those areas come into play. So location's really key. And antennas, that's another issue too. If you can't hear them, you can't work them. And directivity, well, you know, you can put up something like the picture on the right of the 50-foot boom 6-meter Yagi here that we used at Bob V3KZ's place back in the 80s. That's an 11-element Telerex that originally came from the Science Center. That thing was sharp as a razor. Directivity can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, depending on the band and conditions. You can spend a lot of time spinning the antenna back and forth, and you can miss people. Bob V3WY has come up with a potential solution of fixed tower with stacked 4-element beams. You can see his installation here. It's pointed southwest, and the beam width is such that he's actually picking up the major portions of the areas that are heavily populated with 6-meter activity in that direction. So he doesn't have to turn it. It doesn't have to mess around with rotors. Just point it and away you go. And of course, height's important too. So if you're on high ground out in the country, that's sort of the best of both worlds. I'm here in the city. I'm surrounded by noise in every direction. It seems to be getting worse instead of better. So you know, I do what I can with this is a shot of my tower right now and the installation there. But again, interestingly enough, when we first operated at V3ONT, when we set up in Claremont at V3DMF's farm, which is the epicenter for the Pickering Airport now, unfortunately, but hooked up the 2-meter receiver, and the S-meter on the S-meter didn't change. And I thought, yeah, geez, what's wrong with this? You know, down in Toronto, you hook up the S-meter, hook up the radio, and the S-meter jumps up to S5. But it was so radio quiet up there that we could hear a pin drop at 200 miles easily from that location. So again, you know, location is critical. Being in a radio quiet location enables you to get right down to the noise floor and detect the weakest signals that are coming through. And I know I mentioned directivity on 6 meters. Again, it's not so much of an issue, but on the high bands, it really does still have an important impact on who you can work and how far you can work. And then there's equipment as well. You got many bands, and that means many radios. Although Q5 Signal down in Florida has come out with an interesting little box here, which is a 5-band transverter in one little box, 25 watts on VHF and 10 watts on 902 and 1296. And that basically obviates a whole pile of stuff. Demi are working on a microwave version of this as well. And others I'm sure are working on similar projects. So the amount of equipment is gradually shrinking down to a very manageable size. And I think also it's being driven by a lot of the developments in the software-defined radio side of things, and computers as well. So who knows where that's all going to go? I've got a Hack RF, which I've used on all the bands up to 3456, and it's it's the size of a cigarette box, and basically it's a station that you can put in your pocket, basically. So is that going to be the end of it? Who knows? Now, I just want to talk a little bit about operating techniques as well. So a lot of HF guys come up on VHF and start trying to operate in sort of HF style, and wonder why nobody's coming back, or they're not getting the run rate that they're expecting. So VHF tends to be a little bit like 160, not really cutthroat competition. I mean, we're all friends up there, but that doesn't mean we're not competitive. But it's a little bit different than HF. And CW, CW gets through really well. But if you try going on there at 40 or 50 words a minute, nobody's going to come back to you, because there are a lot of the guys up there just don't work CW or can't copy at that speed. So you got to dial it down a little bit. On the other hand, digital's kind of taken over as well on 6 and 2 meters with FT8, FT4, and some of the other modes, which has really played into played well with the guys that don't, the no code guys. And it's in some ways it's kind of vacuumed up all the activity from single sideband and CW in a lot of ways. But for instance, on 6 meters, if the band opens, you can do a much higher run rate on CW than you can on FT8. So the word is, like, if you start seeing openings, get off FT8 and go on sideband if you're serious about working cues. That always doesn't work, but we'll see how things go. It's still sort of early days with that, and a lot of propagation long distance contacts require patience because of QSB fading, where you see the signal will come in like on 160 on an up peak, and then you'll get a down and the signal will disappear. So some of the best things you can do is run skeds where you transmit on one sequence like first 15 or 30 seconds of every minute, and then listen for the other station on the other 30 seconds, and that way you can catch these propagation waves, and then you wind up not having people sending at the same time, which often happens because one station loses a contact and thinks it's been turned over and starts sending, but the other guy's still going. So I mentioned on SSB on 6 meters, if you get a sporadic E opening, man, go for it, and you can get some pretty good run rates. We've seen in past contests. So That's the way to go. MSK 144, the digital meteor scatter stuff that's been around since 2003, 2004, and has evolved very, very much so recently, is the way to go with 6 and 2 meters on random meteors in the contest, particularly in the mornings, the morning time. So you can really make a lot of contacts and work a lot of grids going that route. And then every year, every contest, WZ1V and I always seem to make one last FT8 contact on 432 within the last 2 minutes of the contest. I don't know why that happens, but it happened in January. It happened the year before. And Ron, I tried running with Ron on CW, and we don't hear each other. And then we flip over to FT8 and boom, it's like magic. So I think next contest, I'm just going to tell Ron, like, okay, last half hour of the contest, we'll run everything on FT8. And then as well, you know, the more bands you have, the better your score. That's something I found out. That's why I've added all these other bands. We've been able to make use of the band contacts and running the bands with other stations that have multi band capability as well. So now, is that SO12R or SO2R or what? So you just have to remember which mic to grab if you've got more than one radio, and that's always good fun with some of the rover stations. Well, I've been calling you and you're not coming back. Oh, yeah, wrong mic. And life's too short for QRP. So again, you know, if you're not being heard, you can't work people. So the important thing is to boost your ERP. And you can do that with antennas, and you can do that with power amplifiers as well. But one must be mindful of the various operating classes in the contest, depending on what category, if you want to be in the high power category, the low power category, QRP or whatever. But certainly power helps, especially over some very long scatter paths. And you know, FT8 and Meteor Scatter MSK 144 have really helped a lot too, to add extra capability to existing power levels. So in a lot of ways, it's not terribly important, but it certainly helps. And you're talking about path loss over distances. You can see how the EME, on an EME path loss of 300 dBs, you certainly need a little bit of ERP to make contacts there. But it applies to terrestrial as well. So that's something to consider as well, adding power, antennas, and radios. Now the internet came along and seems to have added all kinds of additional tools to contest operation. Chat tools like ON4KST and Ping Jockey allow you to set up skeds and make contacts accordingly on all the bands. Back in the old days, we didn't have that. We would write letters to people or phone them and set skeds up and say, I'll meet you on Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on this frequency. Yeah, you know, and you never know if they're going to be there or not. But now it's instantaneous. So we're all spoiled. It's a tremendous tool. And there are other tools as well for monitoring weather and propagation conditions, like Mountain Lake APRS site, which monitors a lot of the APRS activity on 2 meters. And then you can spot the red spots, and the red spots indicate band openings in essence. So you can keep track on what's going on there on the internet as well. So lots of tools out there to add to the confusion and the distractions and all the fun on VHF. Anyway, then there's multi-op operating. As I mentioned got started in that back in 1970 with three CWT Portable 3 up in Claremont, and then the following year we got to the Call V3 ONT, and that call's been activated off and on over the years since. This is just a picture from our 1982 operation at Bob KZ's place, where we took over all his towers and turned them all into VHF towers for the weekend. That was a lot of fun. So multi-op's all about logistics, and I'm sure you HF guys all know about this, and I had no idea when I got into this. It's like suddenly, oh, we need towers. Who has towers? We need rotors. Who has rotors? We need masts. We need antennas. We need hardware. What about power lines? Somebody go to Canadian Tire and buy 10 spools of number 14. Oh, and I guess we need some number 12 as well, and stuff like that. And then jumpers, coax, all that stuff. And then we ran into issues with harmonics from 2 meters up on 432, and radiation at the IF with transverters using 28 meg IFs. And if you get like 5 guys operating different transverters on 28 megs, and suddenly you're hearing signals, and it's like, I don't think that's on 2 meters. That seems to be our 6 meter station bleeding through. Then you get into filters and all kinds of stuff. Then there's chairs, desks, logging, networking now, food, who's going to be the chief cook and bottle washer, places to sleep, toilets, stuff like that. Spare rigs, parts, because stuff breaks. And typical Murphy operation, stuff breaks just before the contest. So it's a logistical nightmare. You learn these things. You learn them very quickly. So V3 ONT, who? Canada? I mean, that was some of the reaction we got from the US guys when we started up. It was like, W2SZ was like, holy cow, like, what are you guys running there? You're pinning my S meter. But they were our target operation because they were a huge multi operation with probably one of the best locations in the East, up on Mount Greylock. And those guys got out like you wouldn't believe. They seem to have a magic spot there. So we were really trying to emulate their activity and put on a show for the US to let them know that, hey, like, we're here and we're not going away. So we did that in the 70s. I think our best score, we placed in the top, we made it into the top 5 in the 70s. And then everybody kind of broke off going in different directions, because we started out when we were seniors in high school and sort of finished up when we graduated, and people left for their first full-time jobs and moved away and things like that. So it was kind of a really fun experience that we all hold dear. 1982 came along, and we fired up at Bob KZ's place and broke our old record, setting a new record of 183,000 points, and that put us in number 2 spot in North America. And this was before grids, so it was just working sections and contacts. But we had every kind of propagation you can think of that weekend. We had Tropo to Florida on 2 meters. We had Sporadic E on 6 meters and 2 meters. We had Aurora on 6, 2, and 220 megahertz. We had Tropo on 432, and from Bob's place, we had a view that was just unbelievable from up there. You can probably almost see Europe from up there. It was just amazing. So that made a big difference. Plus, we worked an awful lot of FM guys too, because we had promoted using FM and we're able to get a lot of the guys from the FM community to give us contacts as well, which was just fabulous. And then things kind of laid low for a few years again, and one of our main spark plugs, Dennis V3ASO, he had moved up to the Ottawa area and then bought a house in Mountain, Ontario in FN25, and got a bunch of the boys back together in 1992 and set a multi record for Canada of 544,000, almost 545,000 points from FN25, and that record still stands today. So contesting, as I mentioned, I mean, it started way back, and it's been evolving over time. It has its ups and downs in terms of activity as people come and go and groups come together and operate and then dissipate, like our club, like ONT has. But you know, looking at ARL statistics, the number of logs that have come in continues to grow, which is great. So we still seem to have a interest and activity across North America, and you know, we're doing everything we can to try and stimulate that activity. I've just listed some of the Canadian results here, just to show you where we are, and you know, the numbers are good. We're really doing well considering our location and population density and things like that up here. So I think it's a great opportunity to continue. And you know, if you've got an interest and want to try it, by all means, jump into any of these contests and give it a run. And of course, then there's EME. And of course, we weren't really satisfied with everything. And you know, we knew about the Algonquin Radio Observatory back in the 70s. I remember sitting with Peter V7PS, who was V3 EMS at that time, because we were in school together at U of T, sitting drinking coffee like we usually did between classes, or you know, if we didn't want to go to class, we'd go drink coffee and then talk about, geez, you know, it'd be really great if we could get access to that big dish up in Algonquin. And, you know, so, oh yeah, sure, forget it. Like, they won't let us anywhere near that thing. You know, that thing's worth so much money that the government, there's no way. And strangely enough, you know, 20 years later, the opportunity arose, and we kind of looked at each other and everybody, and it's like, you think we can do something about this? And sure enough, we did. And operating up there, we actually set a record of 6.5 million points in the ARL EME contest in 1994.